Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard, by far the biggest trial of the year. Inside the courtroom in Fairfax County, Virginia, one of the world's biggest movie stars, Johnny Depp, going after his ex, Amber Heard. Johnny suing Amber for defamation based upon an op-ed in the Washington Post with her byline. An op-ed in which she claimed to be a victim of domestic violence. So, for 7 weeks, the jury heard the intimate details of Johnny's and Amber's lives and their dysfunctional relationship. The most crucial testimony coming from Amber Heard. Because if the jury believed her, the case was over and Johnny would lose.
You slipped up there, didn't you, Miss Heard? You let it slip out that TMZ had been alerted to your filing of the domestic violence restraining order, didn't you?
I disagree. That's not what I'm talking about.
But after being cross-examined by Camille Vasquez, the jury did not believe Amber Heard, and she lost. Tonight, part 2 of our inside look at Johnny Depp's legal team. Chanley Painter sits down to speak with Camille Vasquez, while Johnny's lead attorney, Ben Chu, joins us live as we get insight into the preparation and inner workings of Johnny Depp's legal team. I'm Vinny Politan. Great to have you with us tonight. Part 2 of our special look at Johnny Depp's legal team in the biggest trial of the year. I want to give you a quote as I start tonight, a line that I heard so many times growing up. Isn't it true? Isn't it true? Isn't it true? Coming from, of course, Perry Mason. And what was so significant about that? That was really my introduction to cross-examination. Because Perry Mason was a defense attorney, so he would cross-examine witnesses and always start with, isn't it true X? Isn't it true Y? Isn't it true Z? And by the end of the trial, he had uncovered the truth through cross-examination. That's the real test. That's the real test of any witness's credibility. So Johnny Depp v. Amber Heard, we heard what Amber said on the stand, that she was a victim. She claimed she was a victim. And that was her direct examination. And they methodically went through all of that, trying to lay out this story for the jury. And ultimately, it was Amber Heard's credibility that was on trial in Fairfax County, Virginia. It was. If they believe her, she wins outright. But what happened, folks? Camille Vasquez pulled a Perry Mason with her cross-examination of Amber Heard. Her credibility destroyed, Amber Heard's case breaking and crumbling apart, and Johnny Depp winning. So, as we continue to take a look inside Johnny Depp's legal team, Chanley Painter sat down with Camille Vasquez and talked about the cross-examination of Amber Heard. Let's watch.
How beneficial was it to depose Amber before you actually cross-examined her?
Oh, really beneficial. I mean, I deposed her for 1 day and Ben bookmarked me, so he did the first and third day. I studied her. I watched her deposition tape during the divorce.
Is it your testimony that a police officer on May 21 told you that it appeared you looked hurt?
He or she gestured, I can't remember which one, to my face and said, we can tell you've been hurt or you don't look good or something to that effect, but I don't remember the exact words they used.
And then I sat there when Ben was doing the deposition and I just watched her. I watched her mannerisms, her speech patterns, the word choice, and I started learning her.
What was your strategy and preparation in going into this cross? Because you knew early on that you were going to be the one, right?
It was about confronting her with her own words. I wanted every single question to tie back to something she had said, either in a recording or had testified to under oath. Good afternoon, Miss Heard.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Depp hasn't looked at you once this entire trial, has he?
Not that I've noticed, no.
He promised you you would never see his eyes again. Isn't that true?
I don't recall if he said that.
One of the first questions your counsel asked you on direct is, why are you here? Do you remember that?
I do.
Let's please play Plaintiff's Exhibit 357A, which is already in evidence, Your Honor.
See what the jury and judge think. Tell the world, Johnny. Tell them Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp, man, I'm a victim too of domestic violence, and yes. It's a fair fight. And see how many people believe or side with you.
Mr. Depp is your victim, isn't he?
No, ma'am.
And once he left you, you continued to abuse him publicly by calling him an abuser, didn't you?
He is an abuser, and you can look either of us up online and figure out who's being abused online.
I think one of the strongest moments of your cross was when you put photo after photo on the screen and asked Ms. Heard about that photo.
This is a picture of you and Mr. Depp at the event the night after Mr. Depp allegedly whacked you in the face so hard you thought he had broken your nose.
He did whack me in the face.
This is a picture of you at the same event the night after Mr. Depp allegedly whacked you in the face so hard you thought he broke your nose.
This is a picture of me after he did whack me in the face.
The night after, right?
Yes, it is.
This is you in the backless dress at the Mordecai premiere in Tokyo, right?
That is correct.
You would agree that there are no bruises or visible marks on your back in this picture?
No, not that I could see.
I give a lot of credit to my partner, Wayne Dennison, for that. We needed to, again, give an explanation to the jury as to why Johnny wasn't looking at Ms. Heard throughout her testimony, and we did that by pointing that out and, again, giving them an answer. I didn't want them to go into that deliberation room and have any questions. And then Wayne said to us in the war room, he said, just answer the question that everyone has. Did he abuse her or not? You start with the pictures, obviously.
That's a photo of you opening your mouth on the right?
That's correct.
And again, a larger view of the same photo on the bottom?
That's correct.
With a split lip?
You've seen pictures of it without makeup.
And he's right. Juries are incredibly visual. They needed to see those pictures.
What about the pictures she brought forth that did show red or discoloration?
The ones that were altered?
The extractions we were provided were backups of iTunes, just exports. So it's third generation, and there is no way to verify the file paths and the history of any single photo that we've looked at.
Those weren't so concerning to me. I mean, we had police officers trained in domestic abuse responding within minutes of an alleged violent assault with a cell phone, and they don't see anything. They don't see swelling. They don't see, a red mark. What they see is redness that they associated with crying.
Do you see a red mark on Amber Heard's cheek and above her eyelid and above her eyebrow on this picture?
Her face looks flushed, yes, redness.
Okay. And what is your perception of what that is caused by?
Like I said earlier, it's consistent with what I see in her crying.
During the cross of Amber, anything surprise you?
Yes, she came off angry at some of the questions. And that was surprising to me, but also I thought really helpful for our case, because I think the jury got to see, at least in our opinion, who the real Amber Heard was.
Did you ever see a tear?
I did not see a tear during the trial.
Joining me now in Washington, D.C., trial attorney, partner with Brown Rudnick, LLP, and the lead attorney who represented Johnny Depp during his defamation case, Ben Chu. Back with us, Ben. Great to see you. Thanks again for being here for part 2 of this as well. I have to ask you, during the cross-examination of Amber Heard, you're the one seated next to Johnny Depp. What's going on there? Is he giving notes? Is he giving any reactions to things that she is saying that you're able to use?
Yeah, Johnny was very much involved throughout the trial. He would give us notes that we would use. They were always spot on. As Camille referenced, he did tell her, he promised her that he would never look her in the eye again. So he he kept to his words. He never would look up to her. He didn't want to give her that benefit after what she had done to him.
How revealing do you think this cross-examination was? You know, because to me, Johnny Depp testified, I get it, but to me, the case was really about what she said, because it was her words and her credibility. At the end of the day, I thought was what the entire case was about.
I completely agree. I think it was the linchpin of the entire trial, and we decided fairly soon after Amber's 3-day deposition that she was the right person to do it, and she did a masterful job. It was, you know, all of us had input into it. Johnny had input into it, but it was really Camille who put it all together. And one of the things that she really did so well is she never came across as mean. As she said in the interview with Chanley, she was really taking Ms. Heard's own statements and her own actions and asking her to explain them. And frankly, there was no good explanation for them.
You know, the one thing that Camille said that really struck me was that the way Amber Heard came across, the demeanor, sort of angry at some of the questions. Were you surprised as well? Because, I mean, the bottom line is Johnny Depp, your client, is an actor. She's an actor. You know, you want the jury to like you. You want to seem likable. Were you surprised that in the way that she came off when responding to questions about her own words?
I was surprised. I was surprised to see the anger. I think the anger was real. I think when people get caught in untruths, they tend to be angry. I mean, you can see it, you know, throughout our own life experience. I thought, particularly when she came off the stand after the redirect, I think she realized the redirect did not come across well, and the chief judge had to remind Ms. Heard twice that she could go sit next to her counsel, you know, having come off the stand after completing her testimony. And instead of sitting down next to her counsel, she stormed out of the courtroom. Now, that was something that was shocking to all of us. I'd never seen anything like that in my 34 years of practice. It came across to me as incredibly disrespectful to the court, to her own counsel, and frankly, to the jury.
And revealing, I think revealing, because you're judging someone's credibility, you're judging who they are. And I think that really came across through the testimony and especially the cross-examination. All right, Ben Chu is with us the whole hour. When we come back, we've got more of Chanley's interview with Camille Vasquez, plus coming up next hour. Welcome back. I want to let you know that Court TV has reached out to Amber Heard's legal team from this defamation trial multiple times for an interview, and our requests were denied. There's a standing invitation for them to sit down and talk with us about their side of the case. We'll see if they respond. In the meantime, Johnny Depp's legal team did invite us up to New York, and Camille Vasquez sat down with Chanley Painter for an interview. Let's show you more of that as we get more insight into what happened in Depp v. Heard.
Which witnesses presented the most challenges for your team?
She didn't have many live witnesses, right? I would say it was probably Dr. Hughes.
The main opinion is that Ms. Heard's report of intimate partner violence and the records that I reviewed is consistent with what we know in the field about intimate partner violence, characterized by physical violence, psychological aggression, sexual violence, coercive control, and surveillance behaviors.
I think Whitney, her sister, we were concerned about that, but I think Rebecca did a fantastic job, and she was very ill, as you might recall. But I think she did a really beautiful job of showing the jury that these were two sisters that truly cared for one another and were going to support each other no matter what, in a delicate, really graceful way.
And she helped support you? In part. I also was working myself, and yeah. And you're grateful to her for being there when you needed her, right?
Of course.
And just like she protected and cared for you, you want to protect and care for her, right?
And when I can, of course, but yeah.
And as you mentioned, most of Amber's witnesses weren't live, including some of her friends. Why do you think that is?
I think, as we said in closing arguments, this is a person that burns bridges.
Sitting here today, do you still consider Ms. Heard a friend?
I wouldn't consider her not a friend.
What does that mean?
We don't speak. We are not enemies.
When did you first tell Ms. Heard that you were no longer interested in having her as a client and being friends with her?
Well, I just told Amber that, you know, I wish her well and I just have no interest in continuing a relationship.
I don't think these people were her friends anymore. And I understand they testified the way they did, but most of them had already given testimony during the divorce, had been deposed during the case, and so they were locked in to a version of what they claim happened. And that's not to say that they were lying or not telling the truth. Something else that's really important to note here is none of these people saw abuse, not one.
One of my favorite parts of the trial was watching you keep your finger on the microphone. And you would literally object to every question Elaine Bredhoff asked.
You know, trying to say that...
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
He was drinking...
Calls for speculation and leading.
To sedate
Objection,
me?
Your Honor, hearsay.
Did the table collapse?
Yes, it did.
Objection, Your Honor, leading.
Because he didn't share it until this date.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained. Was that dark colors before, or?
Objection, Your Honor, leading.
I said, was that dark colors before?
I'll sustain the objection.
There was no way we could have predicted that that redirect was going to go so badly for them. I mean, it really seemed like she had put it together at the last minute. It was some notes that she had on a notepad. There's a part of me that almost feels badly for her as a colleague. What I remember about that redirect was, I think at one point she said, "I'm trying here, I'm trying." And I looked over to that side and no one was helping her. They were all just, you know, in their seats, looking down, and I felt so badly because our team was incredibly different. They knew every question. They were predicting the answers. They had the evidence, you know, page and line, ready to go. It was just such a different process. I felt supported. It was shocking how ineffective that was.
Why did you tweet about the makeup and Mr. Waldman?
Because he was calling me a liar and a hoaxer and that this was an elaborate hoax just to get Johnny.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
I'll sustain the objection. Next question. Next question.
Yeah, okay. I don't have any more questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. All right. Ma'am, you can have a seat next to your attorney.
How would you evaluate her as a witness?
I don't think she came off particularly likable or credible. I think the fact that she didn't own up to anything caused major concerns for the jury.
There was evidence of violence, even still. So how would you explain that?
Well, there was a victim of domestic violence in this relationship, and we say it was Mr. Depp. The person that ended up in the hospital after Australia was Johnny Depp. The person with any injury was Johnny Depp. The only person with medical records in this case was Johnny Depp. I mean, it was a violent relationship, except she was the aggressor.
She threw the large bottle, and it made contact and shattered everywhere. And I honestly didn't feel the pain.
He told Dr. Kipper that Amber had cut off his finger. And he said that only to Dr. Kipper as he was treating this bleeding finger. And we thought that qualify for the medical emergency exception to hearsay, and it did not come in. And to us, that was a key moment, because he didn't want to tell anyone, but he felt he needed to tell his doctor that was literally treating his finger on, in a car, that she had cut it off by throwing a bottle at him.
Big part of the case. Ben Chu's still with us, Johnny Depp's lead attorney. Ben, let me ask you this, because I was in the courtroom as well, and there's a gallery, and it's like everyone there was there for Johnny Depp, other than the media who's covering it, but the regular folks who showed up, all for Johnny Depp. You walk outside, people are cheering. Did it feel like a home game? Did it? Because I grew up playing sports, and you get the crowd going. All of a sudden, it helps you, play harder. Does that have any impact on a lawyer in the middle of a trial?
It really didn't, Vinny. We were really focusing on Her Honor, the judge, of course, and the jury. And irrespective of what the people were doing outside in the hallway or outside the courtroom, our real focus was on the jury and getting our work done. So it really didn't have the feeling of a home game, as you say, because what we were really focusing on were the people who were going to decide Johnny's fate.
How about this, though? Did it energize you at the end of the day when you get cheered and then you got to go back and do more work to prepare for the next day? Did it give you a little boost of adrenaline, maybe?
That it did. And seeing the alpacas out there dressed as Captain Jack Sparrow, and the level of detail and love that was put into the alpacas, yes, it did make it easier to work the late nights back at the hotel.
So the other big contrast between Johnny Depp testifying and Amber Heard, from my perspective, was the level of comfort. Like, Johnny Depp looked very at ease and comfortable. Amber Heard looked extremely uncomfortable. Why do you think that was while they were testifying?
Well, my perception is Johnny was at ease with himself because he was telling the truth. And even though there was a lot of focus and a lot of pressure on him, at the end of the day, when you're telling the truth, you don't have to remember things. You just tell the truth. And Johnny, at the beginning, we talked about this a little bit last night. He was prepared. We told him that this was going to be an ordeal, and that everything was going to, the worst recesses of his life were going to be exposed. And I think once he steeled himself to that, he was confident that he was doing the right thing and that he was going to tell the truth. And I think that gave him some peace. I mean, he has an amazing way of finding humor in the macabre. I mean, when his finger was cut off, for example, and we would all look down, out of respect, and he would say, "Oh, I call it Little Richard." He has a nickname for his finger, and that's just the kind of guy he is. He finds humor. He wants to put other people at ease, and at the end of the day, I think he came across as who he actually is.
Big difference. I mean, stark contrast. All right, Ben Chu's going to stay with us. When we come back, we will have more of Chanley Painter's interview with Camille Vasquez. Don't go anywhere.
Silver.